All right. We all want to stay at home sometimes. I say we all. Some people want to get out, and I understand it, and I respect it. But for all our sakes, we need to avoid crowds any way we can. I think we do right now. But when we're in crowds, we try to be safe. But you still got to mail stuff, right? What if you need to go to the post office? What if you need postage to send out letters and packages? Well, don't worry. Stamps.com is here to help. With Stamps.com, you can print postage on demand and skip those lines and crowds at the post office. And plus, you can actually save some money with the discounts that you can't even get at the post office. What discounts do you get at the post office? I don't get them there. And as if that wasn't enough, Stamps.com also offers UPS services with discounts up to 62% and no UPS residential surcharges. Simply use your computer to print official U.S. postage 24/7 for any letter, any package, any class of mail, anywhere you want to send. And once your mail is ready, you just leave it for your mail carrier, schedule a free package pickup, or drop it in a mailbox. No human contact required. It's my dream. It's that simple. Right now, my listeners get a special offer. Listen up. That includes a 4-week trial plus free postage and a digital scale without any long-term commitment. Just go to Stamps.com, click on the microphone at the top of the homepage, and type in Bob. That's Stamps.com and enter Bob. Stay safe, my friends. Well, here we are. It's Bob Saget's Here for You. My name is Here for You. My name's in the title. I'm really happy to have the guest that I'm about to have on. We're acquaintances. I'm going to try to take it to the next level because he's a handsome dude, and he's just a really special, talented, really good man, and he can do just about anything. He can. His acting range is unbelievable, and just as a person, I just like him so much. And so here comes my conversation with Jon Hamm. You're okay. You're living a life. You're in LA, right?
Yeah, I'm in LA. I'm kind of up in the hills, so I'm able to walk around outside in the park and be, have some sort of semblance of nature. I'm sure you've had this experience, but like there's certain days where you kind of look up and you're like, how is it 6 o'clock already?
This is as fast as like if you're filming something and the day goes by. That was 12 hours, because you work so hard. You don't know if you're lucky and you have the career. I don't want to say I looked you up because I don't. This is not an interview. This is a convo. But I still did. And my God, there's 100. I don't know. I don't think Jimmy Stewart worked this much.
Well, certainly not now.
Not now. And he didn't do animation to your level. No, but I met him a couple times.
I never got the chance to meet him. Obviously I loved him as an actor and all his old stuff, but I used to love watching him on Carson.
That's where I met him. And I met him twice in one night. I screwed up so bad because he would do the poetry, right? Yeah.
It was so refreshingly sweet and vulnerable and sincere in a way that there were two kinds of guys that I loved on Carson. And in extrapolating that out, like on Letterman and then whatever now, but
of course.
The guys that were super duper sincere and had the chops and the career and everything to back it up. And then the guys like Charles Grodin or Steve Landesberg.
So dry.
Who were so dry, and you could tell Carson was eating it up, and that half the audience got it and the other half was fully aggressively not on board with their bit.
Yeah.
But I remember Grodin, but Steve Landesberg especially. My dad and I would watch. God, this was in the early '80s, late '70s, maybe.
Right.
Watch him on there, and we would both just be howling with laughter because I got the joke. Like it was so fun, that like fake consternation, and didn't want to be. Grodin was so good at it.
They were honest though. They didn't really want to be there, but that's what made them so lucid and good. Because sometimes the most negative people, that are not, doesn't mean they're mean. It means they just have an ill way of looking at the world, are such good actors.
Do you remember on Letterman when he would have Harvey Picar on?
Yeah.
Do you know that guy?
Yeah.
And he was just this weird, super specific guy. Stern was that way too. Like, cause I grew up in St. Louis. Like, we didn't get Howard Stern. Like, it wasn't that we didn't understand him. There was no way to listen to Howard Stern in the 80s. Like, he was the biggest thing in whatever. He was the king of all media, but you couldn't really listen to him. So I didn't know his shtick. And I would see him come on Letterman, and I was like, who is this guy? Like, what is going on? And Harvey Picar was the same way. Like, I was just like, who are these weirdos that Letterman just, you could tell, was so tickled by.
Well, did you see the stuff? I'm so old. I'm so much older than you that I actually hosted an NBC special about Andy Kaufman. And I did it with Rodney Dangerfield, Mary Lou Henner, and Lily Tomlin. When he would make an appearance, you know, he would do the full Elvis. People didn't know what to make of him. It was performance art.
He was so committed to it, and it was so chaotic and anarchic, but it was really good TV.
It was great TV. He was so real. He was so real in how he did it. And I met Steve Landisberg because I was starting when you were watching with your dad, that Johnny Carson. Then I would see him at the Comedy Store that night when I was like 21, 22, working out, trying to get started at the Comedy Store. And that's when I met Letterman, who was my first MC. So, but those, Johnny, which is David's, template for his life.
Right.
I was on there quite a bit, and he, not as a stand-up, but as panel, he liked me. And Shanley had me on first, and then I was on with Johnny, and then Jay, and then Johnny, like 13 times with Johnny, and a lot with David as well later. But David and Johnny would react to me the same way. I would talk kind of fast, and I would tell a story, and there'd be no ending to it. And then I said this to both of them, and it was funny that I went, wow, David's a lot like Johnny. I would say, this is true, and Johnny would go, I don't care, just tell it. And then I saw in his eyes that he's just digging it, And the same with David. He says, I don't care if it's true, just tell the damn thing.
Yeah, doesn't matter.
That ornery thing, and now we've got a lot of sweet guys doing.
Yeah, it's kind of gone the other way. I think and it must just be because there's so many more of them that kind of uniqueness of personality or that specificity of personality doesn't really play as much as it did back then when there were fewer options.
Right.
But I remember the first time I did Letterman, and it must have been 2008 or 9 or something like that. Kind of right when Mad Men was really going, and I had watched David Letterman. I watched his daytime show. Like, I was such a fan of his stuff, and my dad would let me stay up to watch, the late show, the late night version before he got the 11:30 spot, and I just loved it. I loved all the stupid stuff and the gags and the stupid human tricks and the throwing watermelons off the top of the building, and
that was it was post Gallagher, but he was doing stuff that everybody's doing now.
It was basically in a pre-internet world, it was that viral content that everybody wanted to see. But back then, if you didn't see it, you didn't see it.
No,
there was no version of like, oh, check it out on YouTube the next day or Instagram or whatever. If you didn't see it, you had nothing to talk about, and that was why it was such a specifically cool and again kind of punk way of doing that relatively tired format of the late night talk show panel show, and
that's so been replaced by games
and like silly, like everybody's friendly and what have you.
We're going to ask you 5 questions. I like mean tweets, though. I enjoy that.
Mean tweets is funny.
That's Letterman-esque. That has that
for sure
bitter evil thing.
But I just remember waiting to go on the first time I was on, and I think Ricky Jay was on the show, who I also loved. I had his book,
and we lost him, and he was
he's no longer with us. That was a real loss.
Yeah,
like
huge.
a totally unique individual. So I was just happy to be there. And I think I was the second guest, and I was really just wanted to watch Ricky because I just love his fascinating weirdness.
Right.
But I remember waiting backstage to go on, and Biff Henderson is back there with his little mic and his
Sweetest
thing. Like,
guy.
I was literally like, "You're real! I can't believe you're real! Like, you have a job and you're like an actual stage manager." And he's waiting to kind of tap me on the shoulder to go on, and he kind of leans into me and goes, "First time on the show, right?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Don't worry." He goes, "If he doesn't like you, you're going to find out in the first 5 seconds."
Right.
I kind of looked at him. I was like, "Jesus, man. Okay."
Good. That's a nice break a leg.
Yeah, really. And so, fortunately enough, we got along. But yeah, it was so. I don't really get nervous on those because there's no real way to fail. You just kind of whatever. You just go out there. The only way to fail is if you're trying too hard, I feel like, on those things, because the audience can read it, and Dave can certainly read it, and he's not into that. But I was legit nervous on that first one. And then the second time I went on, I think was right after his like big scandal thing had broken. And so it was like a real weird like energy in the room.
You couldn't talk about it. He would
absolutely not. No way. And it was just kind of like, so hi. And then it was just a real awkward energy. But I've since met him and spoke to him a million times, like in person. And he's such a nice guy. Like if he likes you.
Yeah. And he did like me. When I met him, he was, for a minute, dating a cousin of mine who passed away.
Oh,
and
wow.
I said to him at the Comedy Store, this is pre-morning show. And then he got the morning
late
show.
Late 70s?
Yeah.
Early 80s?
78. And I'm 112. And
you look great.
Thanks. It's the lighting. It's the fact that I don't leave the house.
Oh, you got a ring light.
No, nothing. Just, I'll give you the little view of the study.
Oh, what a beautiful room.
I have my own little room, my little man cave that has pictures of dead people on the walls. But I got friends up there. I got Pryor up there and Don Rickles and Rodney and people I was friends with. I'm friends with dead people.
I got to meet Rickles. He was a big Mad Men fan, and I got to meet him on several occasions. And like,
I saw you with Rickles, didn't I? Were you in a restaurant with him? Yeah.
Yeah, probably. That was like part of my, like, when I wake up sometimes and think like, how did I get here? And I think of people that I've met like that, and I flash back to being 7, 8, 9 years old and watching CPO Sharkey, and and if I could tell myself back then, like, someday you're going to meet that guy, and then to actually meet him and realize what a genuinely sweet person he is.
About like, the nicest man on earth.
And he was older when I met him. I mean, he was old. I mean, he was up there, but sharp as a tack and still really funny, and could still just turn it on like that. And it was magical. Like, guys like that I got to meet and befriend, actually. Mike Nichols, same thing, like, as advertised, on brand, the coolest guy in whatever room he's in.
Did you work with him?
Sort of. I did a table read of a movie that he was maybe going to direct, that I was clearly somebody had fallen out at the last minute. So they're like, "Can you please be here?"
That's all my jobs.
Who pissed off the studio head is basically the first question I have. But I didn't know anything about the script. I just kind of was like, they were like, "Show up on Saturday at 2 at Sony." And I was like, okay. And I walked in the room, and it was like Julia Roberts, Buck Henry, Mike Nichols, Allison Janney, Bradley Whitford, like all these heavy hitters. And I was just like, oh, shit. I probably should have prepared something. But
is this during Mad Men? During Mad Men?
Yeah. It was early on in Mad Men. And Mike was taken with me during that experience, and then introduced me to Nora Ephron, who I worked with on a play, like a one of those charity deals where you come in at 8 in the morning and you perform at 8 at night, and you're carrying scripts and you're running into scenery, and it's a hilarious disaster.
In New York, one of the 24-hour
no,
things?
it was in LA. It was for UCLA. It was like for the Fruit Theater, like their big fundraiser.
Right.
And again, it was one of those things where I'm looking around the room. I'm like, why am I here? Like, it was Tom Hanks, Rita Wilson, Marty Short, Bill Shatner, all these heavy, and Nora Ephron was directing it. And I was just like, what?
Well, I hate to tell you, but first question is she also, through people that I know, including Tom, she is as expected as
the nicest. And another loss, another unbelievable loss. Like,
I had a Mike Nichols experience. Go ahead. Sorry.
Her memorial was one of the best, saddest, and weirdest days of my life, because she basically directed it from beyond the grave. Like, she'd said, here's who's going to speak at my memorial. I'm not open for notes. This is what's going to happen.
Right.
And it was Tom and Rita, Marty Short, Mike Nichols, like Meryl Streep, like this murderer's row of people talking about her. And it was beautiful and sad, and it was funny and lovely. And if you knew her at all, you were just like, oh my God, this is a perfect memorial for this perfect person. And it was at Alice Tully Hall in New York City. And myself and my my girlfriend at the time, were like, it's like 1 o'clock. We should go get some brunch or something. So we walked up to Cafe Lux, like 5 blocks away. And sitting in there are like Larry David, Steve Martin, Bruce Springsteen, like all these people. And we're kind of like, oh, geez, like,
it's a Hirschfield painting.
Yeah, let's just go sit in the corner. And we do. And all of a sudden, like, Steve Martin is like, John, come over to the table. Like, come hang out with us. And I'm like, sure, of course.
But that's how you find out, one, how people regard you. It also is, the truth of it is, it's not a star fucker club. It's a talent club. It's a thing where people recognize it in other people. And I'm going to compliment you. You won't need a moist towelette to clean off, but you have an ability. And we did that Doug Benson thing, which is always fun, where he smokes dope and you talk about movies and trivia and it's just convo and not recorded and all good. And there was something, you have this thing where you can be every man, you can be the leading man, you're great at comedy, you have all of the facilities that you can't help it. That's you. You are these things, and they recognize it because it's true. And that's why you have the work that you have. You told me, hey, I made this movie Tag. You might like it. I watched it and I loved it, but it also validated how strong you are at so many things. It's just, you're such a good dramatic actor. I mean, I just saw you in, oh God. Yeah, I have it. I have 20 pages on you. I don't want to look at it. I want to have a conversation. The movie that, I know you got 4 that you can't even have. They're in post right now, which means you probably had to stop shooting right now, right? Were you finishing something?
No, in fact, I was about to start something. Like 2 days before the world stopped, I was in a costume fitting at Warner Brothers for this movie that Steven Soderbergh was going to do, which is an amazing script about, it's basically a heist movie set in 1950s Detroit involving like the big 3 automakers and the fact that they kind of sat on the plans for the catalytic converter because they knew it was going to solve so much of the pollution issues that were, post-war. They just want to sell cars. And if the government made them put a catalytic converter on every car, it was going to increase the cost by like 30%. So they had the technology, but they just sat on it. And somebody, and I think this is a true story, stole the plans and was going to sell them to one of the smaller car makers.
Was it the daughter of the Rosenbergs?
I think it was the mob, actually. Like,
I was making a Jewish joke because Julius and Ethel Rosenberg were sent to the gas chamber. I know you didn't want to mention that. But so that movie is gonna happen?
It's on pause right now. I don't, I think like we were supposed to shoot in June. That's obviously not going to happen. If it pushes too far, then we're going to get into winter time in Detroit, which is a totally different vibe than spring, summer.
Right.
So, but I mean, it's Soderbergh. It's like he's going to make his movie one way or the other. I've another guy I've had the good fortune to work with at various capacities, and that's a dude that just does not hear the word no or it's impossible or anything. He just creates and lets the chips fall where they may. And
those are the great people.
It's so inspiring. You're just like, oh, it doesn't have to be this hard.
I have to ask you about someone that looks at it that way that you worked with, because I had dinner with him one night, which is one of my most fun experiences, like 4 hours in Hawaii at Shep Gordon's house in Hawaii. I sat next to Clint Eastwood, and we talked about women. We talked about life, and I was divorced then, and I watched my kids playing in the yard with my friend Brad Gray and his kids, and it was just interesting. And I asked Clint about women. I'm about to let you talk because you got real stories. And I just said, so tell me about women. And he goes, don't get me started. And then I just started making him laugh, and we had a really long conversation about a lot of things. You're so good in Richard Jewell.
Thanks.
I think it's a really, really, and I know a lot of people think it's a very special movie.
It's a great film, and it's a film that like kind of really was right down the center of Clint's wheelhouse. Like it's a story about kind of an overlooked American hero who kind of lives on the fringes and was sort of wrongfully portrayed in the media. Like there's so many things that Clint likes to reference in his milieu, if I can use that word. I guess I just did. But
I'll say pate.
Perfect. The story of how that movie came around was Clint was looking for a project, and it was at another studio. Another actor was attached. Other producers were attached. It was all this stuff, and he read it, and he was like, "I'm making this movie." And they're like, "Yeah, Clint, but it's at blah blah blah." He goes, "Don't worry about that. I'm making this movie. Basically, go ahead and start pre-production. I'll worry about the other stuff."
Right.
And he called the other studio and said, like, "What's it going to take? I'm going to make this movie." It's like the Jedi mind trick. He was just like, "You're going to give me the film. I'm going to make it." And I think that was in like April, and we were finished shooting by July. And the movie was out in theaters in December.
Is he a one take guy sometimes?
Sometimes, but never
but
to
you
the
gotta have
detriment.
protection, don't you? I mean,
yeah, never to the detriment of the film. Like the kind of the one-liner on him is like, oh, he just works fast, and it's fast and loose, and that's all well and good, but I don't think it's ever to the detriment of the film. Like he likes to surround himself with people that he trusts, which is an amazing thing because, as you know, I'm sure you've worked with people who don't even trust themselves. They get so wound up in like, do I have it? Do I not? I don't know. Let's do 44 more takes, and I'm not sure, and I just want options in the editing room. And he sits there on set, and he looks at the monitor, and he watches you act, and he watches you do the scene. And if he likes it, you move on. And if he doesn't, you don't. And most of the time, everybody, because it's Clint Eastwood, and because, I was working with Kathy Bates, Sam Rockwell, Paul Walter Hauser, who's amazing.
Oh my God.
Nina Arianda, like these heavy hitters. And he just trusted us. And we came in and we did our thing. And he would have a note or two or not. And he would trust his camera guy. It was in focus. It was all good. I liked the shot. Let's move on. Let's go have dinner.
Yeah. Well,
and he's funny. Clint is funny.
Oh, he's hilarious because it's all truth.
He would like sit there and just lob in a story about Rawhide in 1962 or whatever. And you're like, what? What? And then every actor in the universe that he's worked with, and you're just like, tell Richard Burton stories. You're just like, oh, right. You've been working at this for 70 years.
Yeah.
He directed his first movie the year I was born. And I am not young.
What year are you born?
71.
I'm 56, 1956, not I'm 56.
Well, you don't look a day over 54.
Well, that's the lighting in the room, I'm telling you. You're going to compliment me. I have to take a break. Watch how great this break is. All right. We all want to stay at home sometimes. I say we all. Some people want to get out, and I understand it, and I respect it. But for all our sakes, we need to avoid crowds any way we can. I think we do right now. But when we're in crowds, we try to be safe. But you still got to mail stuff, right? What if you need to go to the post office? What if you need postage to send out letters and packages? Well, don't worry. Stamps.com is here to help. With Stamps.com, you can print postage on demand and skip those lines and crowds at the post office. And plus, you can actually save some money with the discounts that you can't even get at the post office. What discounts do you get at the post office? I don't get them there. And as if that wasn't enough, Stamps.com also offers UPS services with discounts up to 62% and no UPS residential surcharges. Stamps.com brings all the services of the U.S. Postal Service right to your computer in the safety and comfort of your own home, office, or anywhere else you're hunkering down right now. Whether you're a small business sending invoices, or you're an online seller shipping out products, or you're just working from home and you need to mail stuff, Stamps.com can handle it all with ease. Simply use your computer to print official U.S. postage 24/7 for any letter, any package, any class of mail, anywhere you want to send. And once your mail is ready, you just leave it for your mail carrier, schedule a free package pickup, or drop it in a mailbox. No human contact required. It's my dream. It's that simple. And like I said, with Stamps.com, you get great discounts too. 5 cents off every first-class stamp and up to 62% off shipping rates. Stamps.com is a no-brainer, especially now, saving you time and money and keeping you safe in these crazy times. Right now, my listeners get a special offer. Listen up, that includes a 4-week trial plus free postage and a digital scale without any long-term commitment. Just go to Stamps.com, click on the microphone at the top of the homepage, and type in Bob. That's Stamps.com and enter Bob. Stay safe, my friends. But then how about family-wise with you? Because work has been, you're a driven, once Mad Men happened, before that you were working. But yeah, when that happened, it was like your life completely changed.
For sure.
And
I mean,
you've been working.
There's only, yeah, of course. Like, I remember I was having this conversation with somebody, but I remember I moved out to LA in 1995. Mad Men happened in 2005, so that's a decade. But I first started working, I remember I turned 30, which would have been 2001, on a movie set. And I was like, okay, like, I feel like I don't have to wait tables anymore. I had quit my job at the restaurant. I was making decent money, which back then was, radically different, but it was still like I could afford my rent for the first time. I could afford to get my car fixed without making a deal with the guy. Like, I'll give you $20 now and $60 next week. And
yeah.
And I could just do that. And it was a turn. You could tell it was like it was a tipping point. And then Mad Men was just a whole other like escalation of that. And so I recognized it as like, okay, this is the opportunity that I've tried to put myself in place to take advantage of. And then the rest of it was like, okay, let's see what the world brings you. And the weird thing that nobody tells you when you have a success like that is that it doesn't get easier. It just gets more complicated.
Right.
And your decisions have more weight because you're making them. The other people aren't making them for you as much. I mean, there's still, you mentioned Brad Gray earlier, who I had the good fortune to know. That dude, talk about you must have known him for
He was my first manager. I met him when I was 21 and he was 20. I met him in Buffalo, New York.
Buffalo, yeah. I saw you on the Shandling thing, I think, talking about that.
Yeah. That was complicated.
I'm sure.
Judd did a great job on that. A real
yeah.
amazing
I thought he did too. That was such a beautiful, and Gary obviously was such an amazing guy. Another guy that I got to meet on several occasions and just like pinch myself.
Yeah.
But what you still have to appeal.
Gary would have said, where did you pinch yourself? I mean, was it around the penis? That was our friendship was based on that for 10 years.
Yeah. Penis joke.
That's all it was.
But yeah, once you hit that level, you still have to kind of appeal to the corporate or overlords, but
Right.
You have so much more leeway in determining what you want to do. And I, to the consternation of my agents and managers and team, so to speak, I just never wanted to do the like big franchisee things. I just preferred to do little weirder, more specific things, and mostly like with my friends who, from 1995 to 2000, basically, I basically lived at Largo and M Bar and Comedy Death Ray and all these comedy clubs because that's what I like to do.
Right.
And I found myself over the years befriending a lot of those guys, whether it's Doug Benson or Scott Aukerman or Sarah Silverman or Patton or Zach or any of those guys.
Well, you're naming kind of the best people that exist.
But they were all hoofing it back then.
Yeah.
None of them were bold-faced names in any stretch of the imagination. And so that was what I kept gravitating towards. We're working with people like that. And then when I would get my chance to do some big honking movie, then if it was something that appealed to me, I would do it. But I can look back on almost all the credits in my resume and even something like Tag, which is a silly movie, but it's based on a true story. It's got 100 pounds of heart to it because these guys they're just goofballs, and we got to meet the real people, and they're as advertised. They're just lunatics, and there's not a mean bone in their body. They're goofy, but they love each other, and I think Hannibal Buress is one of the funniest guys out there,
and a wonderful guy.
And a great guy, and and Jake and Middleditch and all these guys, Renner I'd worked with before on The Town. Like I was like, this will be fun. This will be a fun thing to do, and it was. Like we shot for 6 weeks in Atlanta. We all hung out together. We had an absolute blast working together. Work felt like recess.
Right.
It wasn't anything where it was kind of one of those dream gigs where you're just like, I get paid to do this.
Well, that's a movie. If people listening or watching, they gotta see this movie. If you haven't seen Tag, you got to see it. It's so entertaining, and it's based on reality, which I didn't know going in. You just said it was a fun movie because when something is what it is, you just know it. And it's interesting when you watch like behind the scenes on some things, and you go, of course, that's what the producers and the actors were thinking because it's right there. And that's not that common. Sometimes it's just people going through the motions and they don't even know why they're motivated to go somewhere except they were told to stand there. It's a great story and the friendships are there. I mean, it's fun to watch, but probably more fun to make.
Well, I'll give credit to Jeff Tomsic, who directed it, because he kind of basically said like, okay, here's the sandbox, go play.
Right.
And gave us so much leeway. And I mean, Jake Johnson's an amazing improviser. Ed's an amazing improviser. Hannibal's off the chain. But we populated with Carrie Brownstein and Middleditch and all these, these randos coming in and out. And it was just so, I mean, look, we had days where it was like 200 degrees because we shot in the summertime in Atlanta.
Right.
But
I remember when
what?
Is there a sequel coming out? Did they make a sequel? There's no talk of it?
I don't think so. I mean, I think it was what it was, and it doesn't need to be another one. I mean, who knows? Like, in the days of, like, we're rebooting everything, maybe they will dig back into that story, but I doubt it.
Was there a Mad Men movie discussed?
No. I think, I mean, never say never, but I think Matthew's vision for how that story ended was what he was able to make and write and tell and show during the course of the show. And I think coming back to it would be like egregious in a way. Like it just feels like I don't think he has the burning desire to dip back into that world. And honestly, I don't think many of us do. I think we were all, I know I was super pleased with how it ended, the way it ended. I remember when we were shooting it, and I thought, like, I was telling John Slattery, and we had like 5 episodes to go in the last part of the last season. And I said, this is our last scene together. Because we were in like episode 2 or 3, and he goes, "What?" I go, "Yeah, like this was it." He goes, "No." I go, "Yeah. I mean, it's not your last scene, but this is Don and Roger's like last time we see each other." And it was almost a like casual scene, but when you look at it in retrospect, you're like, it's a beautiful way for these two guys who clearly love each other to kind of say goodbye in their own way.
Right.
Not knowing that it's goodbye. And then the rest of Don's arc is on the road by himself. So I spent, 9 years working with these incredibly talented actors in this amazing world. And then the last 6 weeks of the show, I was working with guest stars and people that I'd never met. And it was kind of perfect. Like it was perfect in the way that Don has to kind of reinvent himself and find himself without the comfort of the people that he knows. And Matt's version of it was like, he's like Siddhartha, like he's just removing everything. He's shedding everything to discover who he truly is. And I thought it was just a really elegant way to end the story.
It was. And it had closure, which most people don't get in a thing, unless they decide to do that 9th year. Some people, after the 8th year, they go, friends went, we're not coming back. That's it. And then I know that a phone call took place that they were a few of the main leads were told, this doesn't happen very often. You get a 9th year, you should do it. And the money was insane.
It'll be interesting to see how that reunion thing shapes up. I mean, I'm excited for it. I think it's
I am too. I always worry about Matthew because I've known him so long, and he's such a good guy. So that's. I
bet it'll be interesting. I bet they fall back into that like an old shoe. I think
you're right. I think he'll get up to speed.
They're all so good. Like they're all so good. You watch those. It's interesting because of Netflix and what have you. Like the resurgence of that show for a generation of kids who never saw it, who weren't alive when it was on the first time. And that's like testament A to the quality of the writing and the jokes and the stuff on that show. But B,
and them.
Yeah, they're all so good.
Yeah.
They're all so specific and good. And it's I mean there's certain things like I've been watching a lot of old like Cheers. And it's the same thing. Like that show could be on the air now. Like there's nothing dated about it. It's just solid jokes based on these solid characters where they're all so like Rhea Perlman's so good. Nick Colasanto, rest in peace, is so good. The Sam and Diane thing, there's a reason like that's become like a thing. Like, a real Sam and Diane thing. Like that was the thing. And
it's so spot on too, because they worked those shows. I did a family sitcom that never went away. I think it's going away soon, but but those shows I would go and visit, and I knew everybody, and they would work. On a film night, it would be a 9-hour shoot because they would do it in front of the audience. Then the audience started to disintegrate, and then they would just pick up and rewrite. And they would do a scene, and then 9 writers would descend.
And nine A+ writers too.
All the best writers, and then Jim Burrows is there, and whoever is the A team directing and producing, and they honed every one as though every single one was the most important movie they could make. And the same thing with I visited Taxi. I visited Cheers.
Oh wow.
I read for Woody Harrelson's part, but I looked like 6 years younger than him then. Um, I don't understand it, but they were very. You can even tell when you're going in and meeting with people that's the people. Those are the people you want to work with, because their kindness, even in that environment, even in the meeting, and that's why whenever I'm directing something, I take too long in my meetings, because I want to, no matter who the person is, they deserve respect. I can't just have them in and out that quick.
I think part of that is that there is, from the top down, like a confidence level that is so apparent. Like, come on in, like, we got you.
Yeah.
We got you. You're not going to get lines that are going to suck. We know where this character's going. You are in good hands. And like, when you see the evolution of that show over the years, obviously when Coach died, that was an irreplaceable character. And then they bring in Woody, and it's like they didn't miss a step. Yeah. And then when Shelley left, they bring in Kirstie Alley, and they don't miss a step.
Right.
And Bebe Neuwirth and Kelsey and like Roger Reese, like that thing like morphed so fluidly and seamlessly to, not a different show, but a different tone and different people. And then everybody kind of hit off of it. Kelsey's whole thing and that whole spinoff, and Bebe Neuwirth was so funny in that show. And I mean, everybody, it was just so pleasant. Like, again, it felt like you were in such good hands, even as a viewer, that you knew that they were going to nail this.
It's almost like how Norman Lear ran his shows. All in the Family, when Edith died, and Norman's a friend of mine, and that's one of my Zoom things. Tomorrow night, we have a cigar night. And what we would normally do at his house, 97-year-old Norman Lear.
I know. I've met him on several occasions. He's the nicest man and sharp as a tack, and an absolute American treasure. And I'm not saying that with a trace of irony, because he actually is.
He really is.
He walks the walk, talks the talk, and puts his money where his mouth is. And he's a beautiful person.
I love him so much. He accidentally butt dialed me yesterday, and then said, "We have a conference call," and he and Lynn are there. And I went like, "You butt dialed me." He said, "Well, it's the best butt dialing I've ever done." And everything is positive. He feels the pain of what we're going through. He'll talk about, we'll talk about politics off the record. I had him on here, and we talked for 90 minutes. He is, and the way he did All in the Family, and I used to sneak in and watch it. And I was 16, 17 or something. And I was at CBS Television City, and he did the warm-up. And they did 2 shows in one night, 90 minutes, 90 minutes each show. There was very little rewrite. It was a play.
Yeah.
And it was apparent. And it was the first time where they really had close-ups in a live way, and the camera would dolly in, and it was things that you didn't normally see in sitcom. And then, like you're talking about, Coach, when Edith died, and then the spin-off Archie's Place, which it wasn't the same, but it still had a level of Carol O'Connor, which is, it's like
any amount of Carol O'Connor is amazing.
All right, I'm going to talk to you about something that can be uncomfortable for some people, but I have it. I've got 3 kids. I've got a wife. I got people in my life. I got insurance, and PolicyGenius is a great, great company. I don't like to be disingenuous, so I try to connect with everything I'm talking about. And with everything going on right now, a lot of people are asking if it's even possible to buy life insurance at all. And the short answer is yes. You can buy life insurance during a pandemic. And if you have loved ones depending on your income, you probably should. I have it, and I have loved ones, so I did. As an insurance marketplace, PolicyGenius is in contact with the life insurance companies on their platform every day. They're keeping track of all the changes in the market so you don't have to, which means they can get you covered quickly and for the best price. Now, here's how it works. PolicyGenius compares quotes from the top life insurance companies in one place. It takes just a few minutes to compare quotes from the top insurers to find your best price. This doesn't just save you a lot of legwork. You could save $1,500 or more a year by using PolicyGenius to compare life insurance policies. Once you apply, the PolicyGenius team will handle all the paperwork and red tape for free. So if you hit any speed bumps during the application process, they'll be there to take care of everything. I don't like red tape. I've never even seen red tape. So if you're one of the many people looking to buy life insurance right now, but you're not sure where to start, head to PolicyGenius.com. PolicyGenius will find you the best rate and handle the process completely. They'll get you and your family protected and hopefully give you one less thing to worry about.
Those Norman Lear shows were so, I mean, we're not breaking new ground here, but they were so absolutely game-changing for network television.
Completely changed everything.
And the inclusion, like I remember like watching and loving Good Times.
Right.
And like as a 9-year-old white kid that lives in St. Louis, like I'm sure it didn't resonate with me the way it would have resonated with a 9-year-old black kid from Chicago or whatever, but it still was so universal in its appeal because it's about a family. And it was a, we talk a lot about now like inclusion and all of this stuff and how important it is. This guy was doing it in the 70s. In the mid 70s.
And Good Times. I mean, that's,
yeah.
The Jeffersons, sorry.
And the Jeffersons, yeah. It's like you just didn't see that.
No. I got really sick of white people shows too.
But there was no imperative. There was no like top down imperative. This guy just thought it would be nice to tell these stories. Yeah. And has, again, like the guy puts his money where his mouth is. He doesn't talk a big game and then he just puts it up there. And he has the incredible sense of true north to know what's going to be good. And it never seems pandering. It never seems anything but honest and real and funny.
It's story and it's characters and staying. I mean, One Day at a Time, he redid it with an amazing Latina cast.
Yeah.
With Hector Alessandra and Rita Moreno. And then it got canned by Netflix and he got popped to pick it up. So he had to sign a 3-year contract at 97.
Wow.
He said, what the hell am I going to do if it gets renewed when I'm 100? And he works on it. And I've seen him on several occasions and I'm like, how are you this old? Because you don't. It's like talking to you. I mean, it's like, there is no, and he does surround himself. He's got his, triumvirate of friends. He's got Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner.
Sure.
And these are his dearest, and other people that he misses, like Bud Yorkin, that he did all the TV with. But when we hang out, do you play a musical instrument or anything?
I do not.
Well, you're perfect then. You can just do this. Can you do a mouth pop or?
Yeah, sure, I can do that. I'm the rhythm section.
We'll give you a tambourine or maracas. But there's a music night we do, and we just do it for 4 hours at his house. And he just sits there and sings, doesn't know half the songs because we're playing, and they're Springsteen, but he goes, that's a great song. What is that? And that's Darkness on the Edge of Town. And then he'll go, that's a great song. That Bruce Springsteen. But it's not like you're talking to an elder. I don't think, like Don Rickles was a father to me. Norman Lear is a friend. He is just a dear, brilliant Obi-Wan Kenobi friend.
Well, and you said it early on in part of this conversation, but like he just leads with pleasantness. And there are so like, that's in such short supply these days where, the kind of the coin of the realm is acerbicness and like toxic acidity, like this, and it's whatever, here we are. This is the era we find ourselves in.
Right.
But when you do meet those people and they lead with that just beautiful, pleasant, generosity of everything, of spirit, of creativity, it's so affirming. And it reminds you that like, oh, there are other people like that. They just don't tend to scream into megaphones and storm state capitals.
There's dignified humanity. There are people that, and what he does, and that's what I'm trying to remember as I accidentally I had a 6 a.m. Bunch of junket radio things this morning and a couple of TV things. Really fun. So you have 10 minutes with everybody. And,
oh, God.
Right. And I was talking this morning to Minneapolis and didn't even wasn't watching the news, wasn't thinking of something that's going to be there for a long time, not going away. And I've been watching the nobility of people that are saying we have to live together. And that gave me hope in a time where there's so much pain, and there's still, how can there be racism? How can it be? And there are people that...
It is one of those things where you think, like, exactly what you said, but like, how is it that in 2020 we're still dealing with a version of the shit that Martin Luther King was trying to get rid of in 1960? Like,
we're dealing with Revolutionary War stuff. I mean, we're dealing with stuff that those families that 300 years ago, their great-great-great-grandparents wanted it to be this way. I mean, I grew up with segregation in Virginia. So,
wow.
And St. Louis is not a playground either. I mean,
I grew up one neighborhood away from Ferguson, and I grew up on the north side of St. Louis, which was the black part of town. And I went to, like, after my mom died, I lived with my dad, who lived on the north side, and I went to a school that was probably 90% African American. And it was like an eye opener, but it was also like, well, I'm not going to go to school. Like, it's still school. And I think that's the real disconnect, is that we're so invested in either looking the other way or separating ourselves so that we can not have to deal with stuff like that, that instead of finding, again, back to Norman Lear, the commonality and the universality of life and experience and love and family and community, the move seems to be, maybe we should all just be, these rugged individualists, and that's the better way to do it. And it's kind of like, it's not. Like, 50,000 years of human evolution have proven that we're better together, not by ourselves. And that includes every iteration of the human body. Like, it's not just everybody line up behind your own skin tone and hairstyle and sexual orientation. Like, no, we're all humans. Like, that's it. Some people like dogs better than cats, but like, beyond that, like, there's a lot of like commonalities. And so when stuff like this happens, or when these shootings happen, or what have you, you just kind of like, no, that is not representing our better angels, and we have to do better.
And then the pandemic comes, which some people think it's a conspiracy theory, and it's very real, and everybody went, okay, this will unify us. This is like Cloverfield. We're being attacked by a Mars attack, so it's going to unify the whole Earth, and we're all going to fight this enemy together. But instead, it goes, well, they did it.
Yeah, finger pointing.
And it's there. You know what? We're going to take one more break, because I'm not done with you, because I like you. So, and I like those blinds. They're signature now. They will forever be pandemic television signature blinds.
I should get shoot a plate shot of them and keep it as my Zoom background
forever. And you should signal people like Hogan's Heroes. Okay, we'll be back in a moment. All right, we're back. That's my favorite part. I needed it too. That. My God, that whole break. And you changed your shades. Everything's different.
Everything's different. Everything's different.
So how old were you when you lost your mom?
I lost my mom when I was 10. So I was in fourth grade. It was the summer between fourth and fifth grade. She had a very aggressive colon cancer that was undetected. She was 35.
Oh, so sorry. Oh my God.
And in the 70s, the prophylactic cancer screenings weren't really a thing, especially for someone that young. And it was a very aggressive cancer that they couldn't stop. And by the time they got in to work on it, it had spread to her liver and stomach and everything. And it was rough. Like, she went from, being my mom to being dead in probably the space of 3 weeks. And so that was a real wake up call. And also in a way that in the 70s, at least in the Midwest, there wasn't a real attention paid to mental health. It was sort of like, rub some dirt on it and you'll be fine.
Right.
And obviously, nobody
people were ashamed. They were ashamed to talk about it. I lost a sister. She was schizophrenic, and I lost her at 34 from a brain aneurysm. And it was frowned upon. It was, we didn't tell people.
Polite people didn't talk about that. Yeah. It wasn't the polite thing to do. And obviously we know now that, like, talking about it and there's people that can help you with that. I don't know if you saw, by the way, on Netflix, there's a documentary about Daryl Hammond that is,
I have to see it. I know his situation very
well. Truly devastating in so many ways, but it's actually really beautiful because, he's found his way through that darkness. And it was a long ass journey. And I worked with Daryl a couple times on SNL, and I recognized a trauma survivor in him in a way that I was like, this guy's barely holding on. And I had no idea that the depths of what he went through. And the documentary really gets into it. And it is incredible that he's even on 2 feet. And I think he's got a lot of incredible people in his life to thank for that. Yeah. But for me, it was the same thing. It's like one of the doctors on that says trauma doesn't go away. It's like a splinter. You have to remove it. You have to actually actively work at it, or it's just going to sit there and fester, and it'll come out in other ways. And that's for sure been how I've had to, manage that. And I finally started going to therapy when I was in my 20s after my dad died. And
how old were you when he passed?
20.
Oh, God.
And so I had to deal, and it was a lot of it was kind of, coming to a understanding about yourself and how, like, there are things in life that are not in your control.
Right.
And you have to understand that, and you have to move past those things if they're negative, and you have to be grateful for those things if they're positive. And really it was about being present. And when you're 20 and I was sort of rudderless, it's hard to be present because you're constantly thinking about, what did I do? Why did I lose these important people in my past? Yeah. And what am I going to do in the future by myself? And part of that is, like, you make new families, you make new friends, you lean on certain people, and you find out who's important in your life, and you accept them. And that's the best, kind of, thing I can say about how therapy helped me. It was just like having a person who's an outsider, a third party perspective, looking at it from this angle. You can't see it because you're right here, but they're up here, and they're like, okay, well, actually, the way out is right there. You just can't see it because it's around a wall. So take 2 steps forward, make a left, and then you'll be good.
Some friends can help you through it, but therapy saved my life. And I had many friends tell me to go to a therapist, and I went to one years ago that was not a good one.
Right.
And that's the worst. That gave me actual advice, and it was the worst advice. It was about lying and don't tell the truth to this person because that won't work. And that's exactly the opposite of what it's supposed to be. You have to face the truth and go through it. But I was at the point after losing both my parents and having family issues and kids, and I'd lost my sisters, and that grief, even though the splinter is taken out, even though I've gotten through it, and I didn't have therapy to help me get through that then. I made a TV movie about one sister dying of scleroderma, so that was like, that kind of didn't help. It kind of made it even worse. But then you go through waves of grief years later, and even with therapy, with all of it, and you'll go, wow. And you'll have a dream about your mom or your dad or your family member or a friend. I mean, I've had Brad Gray in a couple of dreams lately. I've had Gary in my dreams. I've had redoing history in my dreams of my life, of albatrosses. But then, I mean, I remember I was sitting at my computer and I decided I'm going to book my own flight. I'm on American. I'm trying to remember those days, flights, and I'm going to book this flight. I couldn't book the flight. I went, okay, this is where the mental health is. You're shot. You're shot.
Yeah.
The circuits are shot. If I'd been on a set, I wouldn't have known a line. I wouldn't have been able to do anything. And I went to therapy to a new person, and this was, I guess, about 10 years ago, and it saved me. It truly saved me.
Part of it is recognizing it too. You know, when you're the first time or whatever, there's so much stigma and there's so much misunderstanding about any sort of mental health. And so, you know, sometimes the first couple times you go through it, you think like, what's wrong with me? Like I something's not right, but I can't put my finger on it. It's not like you sprain your wrist. You're like, okay, there's something with my wrist. Like I fell on it weird.
That's from masturbating. That's the only times it's happened. I had a cast made because I threw my back out too. I mean, I went to town. I was single a long time. So, and then after every breakup, I mean, I actually would put the brace on first. After my a couple breakups ago, I was if I had shades like that, I would have ruined them.
But anyway, it's like it is like a thing where you look at it, and the older you get and the more you recognize these patterns that begin to develop, and like you said, you're like, I'm shot. I don't know what it was. I can't put my finger on it, or in it in your case. You then know that there's a possible solution, and a way forward. And if you have the right person or whatever, the right meds or, what have you, you can start to turn that boat around, and it's not an overnight thing. Obviously it never is. But so few things in life that are worth a fuck are,
And I think that I always look at the human being, myself as my own model, as a microcosm for everything, as for the earth. So I don't understand why people don't see what we've done to the earth, how we treat each other. It's like abusing your own body, disliking other people, not giving a shit about the catalytic converter that could have gone and stop them. There must be electric cars that they could make tomorrow that are capable of going 1,000 miles, not 350, where you have to plug in for 30 minutes.
Did you ever see that documentary called "Who Killed the Electric Car"? Really fascinating documentary about, GM came up with the EV1. Do you remember that?
I do.
It was like the 90s. I don't remember what it was, but a long time ago. And they came up with it partially because California and a couple other radically progressive states said, like, we're not going to let you sell cars here unless you start selling some environmentally conscious cars. And they recognized, like, oh shit, okay, yeah, we better, that's a big market. We're going to be losing out and we need to do this. And so they did, and they came up with this car, and yeah, it had flaws, but it was kind of cool looking, and it was electric, and it was fully electric. Like, plugged it in and the whole thing.
Yep.
And then, like, that law or that thing got overturned by some lobbying effort, and GM, like, they wouldn't let you buy it. You could only lease it.
I didn't
And
know that.
GM took back all of those cars and scrapped them, buried them in a desert in New Mexico somewhere or something. I might be conflating a couple facts here, but I just remember thinking like, well, that's awful. Like, why would you just so retro, like go backwards? Like that was clearly like a step forward. And it's like the argument about any kind of renewable energy source, whether it's solar or wind or hydro or what have you.
I don't
like,
understand
what's the downside?
I don't
Like,
get it. It's a huge upside because people will make money. I mean, I went, what about don't they have ocean powered energy? Can't they take giant rebar with cement and that's waterproof, put it in the ocean, even during a tsunami, that won't get pulled out of the ocean? You drill it miles down and the waves just power the entire city. Isn't something like that possible? Not the windmills on the way to Palm Springs, but something.
Yeah, but I mean, and then there's like, I don't know if the last time you've like driven to Vegas or driven through that desert, but there's all those like solar farms now, basically, which are all these mirrors that are aerated and capturing the sun and doing this stuff. I'm like, doesn't that make more sense than fracking? Than jamming a hugely caustic, cancerous chemical into the water table and blowing it up and then getting whatever's left. Like, I mean, it's mystifying that the short-sightedness of and the anger that it instills in people of like, coal's been in my family for years, and it's like, yeah, there used to be a big buggy whip business too. Like, the times move on.
Stockades were very popular.
Yeah, like it just doesn't. I don't understand the anger that it inspires
because people hate change. You can change. I can change. People hate change, and they also love to suck the oil out of the earth. And what is the result? We pollute the earth. We fight over the oil. It causes wars. Wars are over oil. Wars are not really over coal anymore or clean coal. And the oil, you eventually take all the blood out of the vein, and then you have to find another one. You're sucking it out. It doesn't replenish itself like the blood in the body if you're lucky and healthy. So it's so common sense, but you can't go and if you have the wherewithal to do it, if you're an Elon Musk that wants to try to do it, but then I don't know what's up with him. I can't.
It's a tough one to get a line on.
Yeah, I cannot figure that out. But I mean, thinking positive, surrounding ourselves with people that think positive, but how do we get the world to change when it's in the state it's in? I mean, we have a wake-up call right now that we're coming out of stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, and then vaccine, which will be after more people perish, and some don't, thank God. It just, the wake-up call is the skies are clear. It's a good time to build electric cars, get a bunch of robot arms.
I think that what the real unfortunate problem is, especially in a time like now that we're living through, is that what the GOP really has done remarkably successfully over the last 40 years of my life is instill in a huge segment of the population a total distrust of anything the government has to do.
Yeah.
And a total misdirection of what the government actually does. And this argument against like the federal government and how corrupt and evil and wrong and all the conspiracy things and is so misguided, because when you look at the last time we had a really national issue, the Depression, and you saw how FDR dealt with it, it was basically the federal government saying like, you want jobs? You want a job? Come build a dam. You want a job? We're building freeways through everywhere.
Right.
You want a job? Come join the army. Like, you want a job? Like anything, like to get people back to work. And it was sponsored at the federal level. And it built our country's infrastructure. It made us the amazing place we are. The private industry won't do that because it's motivated by profits. It's not motivated by, let's help people. As much as they want to say that it is, it just isn't.
But
it's
they
motivated by
can
the bottom
help
line.
people by employing new inventions and things that are existing right now, and just go and blow them up times 100.
Right. And so, and I feel like,
and energy is a huge.
I'm obviously I'm not a Trump guy, but I'm for solutions.
Right.
And if this guy who has all bluster and bravado would have actually kind of come up with a solution where, he's talked over the last 3 years of his presidency like he wants to fix the infrastructure. The infrastructure in this country needs fixing.
100%.
What a perfect time. Start in every city, have a federal jobs task force where you can sign up and you can work on bridges. You can work on sewer lines. You can work on, the power grid. You can, you'll get trained. You'll get taught
everything. We have to fix it because it's going to fall apart in the next 50 years, 100 years. Gone.
And it's the kind of constant finger pointing and like, well, that was Obama's fault. Like,
yeah.
Who cares?
You can't go backwards. You got to move forward and come up with something inventive. But
come up with something good and a positive.
Yeah, it's a narcissistic thing going on. That's the sad part. But he got elected, and there was hope there. And I had equal amounts of friends in support and complete non-support of him. But I had friends, and I would disagree, and then I would listen because I don't think there's any harm in trying to understand. And I do believe in business, and if business can be turned around to work, I believe in that 100%. But when it's all about you, that's not business. That's narcissism
in a weird, unhelpful atmosphere. I don't know. Chappelle was great about it because he hosted SNL the first SNL they had right after the election.
Right.
And I was in New York for it, and I watched it, and Dave is one of the, as you probably Dave, I'm sure.
Dave is a friend, and he is it's
maybe
almost
like one of the smartest comics, at least I know. And like
like George Carlin, there's a bit of a completely different style. Like Richard Pryor, completely different style. But Richard was bringing up a lot of things that hadn't been brought up before, and George, I mean, half of it wasn't comedy. It was just a statement of they're not looking out for you. And when Chappelle came out in Sticks and Stones and said, "This is your fault," and these are his fans in the front row, and he blames them. It's so eloquent how he's structured and how it's an amazing public speaker, a philosopher, but hilarious human being. And I don't remember what did he say on SNL?
He said on SNL, he gave this whole thing, and it was funny, but he closed with this line, and it was so good. He said, I don't know if he's going to be good or bad for the country, but I'm going to give him a chance. But I demand, as a member of the historically disenfranchised part of this country, that he give me one too. And I was like, that's the best version of that I can come up with. Now,
that's a really fair handshake.
It's gone. And had this guy, I just don't think he has the capacity for that understanding and that compassion. He's just not wired that way.
Right.
But had this guy taken this opportunity to at least try some of that, I think we would be in radically different position right now. And, here we are. I hope it changes. I hope that this behavior is not rewarded, because I just worry about the collateral damage that it's having on the, as you say, on the national psyche.
Yeah.
It's
the world psyche, because
now it is.
It's like Game of Thrones. People are coming, dictators are popping out everywhere, and the world is wanting to be run like empires again. And that doesn't work.
Yeah, I
You're
mean,
playing the game of Risk.
it's a weird.
If they offer you the starring role in Risk, don't take it. Risk, the movie.
It was. If you thought it was boring as a game, wait till you see the movie.
If you never knew where Zimbabwe was, I never knew the country, the world, and I will tell you what I have learned through this time, through media. As bad as all networks play that sensational music as we're going to break, right before even the best broadcasters tell you, we're going to get to the bottom of this right after this. That's not news. News is you don't stop. You finish the thought, but it's all, you're luring people in. But I have never been inside the Senate. I've never been inside Congress. I've never seen it to this. We saw it on C-SPAN, but this is purely televised, produced work that the freedom of the press is obviously a problem for the regime because you get to see what it is. But then for others, it just validates their beliefs that, the left is wrong and the right is right. And
it's a weird thing because what we saw, I think, with Trump, and I think moving forward, it's only going to be a version of that, is that he won the battle of manipulating the media. Like
he's great at it.
He's great at it. He still is. Yeah, he knows how to like give a 2-second soundbite that he knows is going to play to his base. I remember I was at a dinner for some fundraisers for Hillary when she was the nominee, and they were like, "Well, what do you think?" And I said, you should hire her some joke writers, like really good ones that give her like real good softballs that she can have in the chamber and ready to go, because that's the only thing that hurts this guy is making fun of him.
Yeah.
I sat a table away from him at the Obama White House Correspondents' Dinner when Seth hosted, and I thought that guy was gonna explode because the whole room was making fun of him. And they were good jokes, and they were good joke tellers.
Right.
Seth's line of like, Donald Trump said he is going to run for president as a Republican, which was interesting because I thought he would run for president as a joke. And I literally was like, I was sitting next to Zach Galifianakis, and I was watching this guy, and you could just see the red, pulsing. But here we are. He's a master at manipulating that thing, and
when news conferences, he gets on the
when
news.
No one's there to call him on his bullshit, and even when they do, he's just like fake, wrong, move.
Or he does the apology that was written for him. And I'm sure they say, you better say this because this won't help you. And at a time in the world where we're at a time with disease, with so much tension, with hatred throughout the country, throughout the world, pulling out of so many things that have to do with the environment, all that stuff, to only want to just work on his candidacy for November. That's just, it's like going up at a funeral and talking about a movie deal with the bereaved. It's like going over to the widow and saying, in the third act, what I'd like to do is, it's completely out of place with what's appropriate. And I thought this pandemic, that it was germ warfare. That's what I thought it was. I went, well, this is weird, because I've always thought germ warfare. I don't know why. And I thought, oh, if it's germ warfare, we're going to have plenty of masks, plenty of ventilators. There's got to be a stockpile. I've always thought this way, that there's some, I guess, a fearful conspiracy that something could happen. They could poison the water, or something could happen from some horrible spy or something. I don't know. And it turns out to be just a disease, because don't do stuff with animals is the major thing. Animals and humans, you don't let a goat sit on you. Just don't do it. It ain't going to be good.
Unless you're doing yoga.
That's true. The goat yoga and downward dog. Don't do it with a dog. But I like crying baby. I do that a lot. Sometimes I do
I mean,
homeless woman. I do that. That's not appropriate, but
it's the 21st century poses.
Anyway.
Televangelist.
Oh, my grandmother. That I don't know what's going on with that. And then people getting medals of honor that I'm like, what? How do you get that when you're one of the most reprehensible people I've ever seen in my life through my whole childhood?
It's really the amount that he's been able to double down on the stuff that I think so many people find eye-opening at best and reprehensible at worst is really unparalleled. I think, like, because it's so, it's like, I'm not the first person to suggest this, but it's like the internet troll mentality.
Yeah.
Of like, I'm just going to keep pushing your buttons until you lose your mind. And I don't care what I say, and I don't mean what I say, but I'm going to say it anyway because I know it's going to get a rise out of you. And we can't ignore it because he's the president.
Right.
And it's incredibly difficult to. It's like a misbehaving, adolescent. There's agency there, and they know that they're doing what they're doing, but there's no good strategy other than ignoring it. But we can't ignore it.
No,
because he's got his finger on the button.
It's a lot of id
or in the button
in the button in my speak. But I have friends that say just send him love because he wouldn't know how to deal with it.
Hey man, yeah, that's a solid strategy. I do believe in that stuff. I do believe like in putting out what you want to get. I've seen friends of mine. I'm sure you've had friends of yours who've gone to the dark side and really bathed in that darkness and that.
Well, they're sending hate and they're yelling at televisions and they're marching or whatever they're doing as active as they want to be, but inside they're eaten up and it's ruining themselves. They're hurting themselves with all that anger and hatred. And then
for sure,
he is the kind of human that responds, and a lot of people respond pretty well to hatred. That's when they get their guns up, and it just makes them more fired up to go, well, screw you, I'm going to do what I want.
I find it interesting too because I'm sure you have a lot of friends like this too, but I have so many friends and so much experience with, and I think it's one of the unintended consequences of the internet. But I think that when you're anonymous, when you're not held responsible for your actions, words, thoughts, whatever, you are able to be so much more aggressive. And when people actually meet face to face and talk face to face, the rhetoric tends to, not always, you see plenty of scream fights, but it's usually when a camera's on. And I feel like whenever a camera's on somebody, people tend to amp it up. They want to play for the cameras, whatever they're doing.
Yep.
But usually when you actually meet people in person, you don't find them as odious as you do when you're watching the version of them online or whatever. And when people are held accountable for their words and speech and actions, I think they tend to be much less fiery in their rhetoric. And so I think literally a way to solve a decent percentage of the bilious nature of the internet is to make every single person accountable. You cannot have an anonymous like web handle or whatever. Everything you write on a chat board, everything you write on an Instagram comment, everything you write is your name and your name only. It's not Fatty69, haha. It's not,
well, that's just people that come in and go into they'll slam into this Zoom, or they'll write THX. That's a movie. They'll write LQGBY. That's another thing. I'm gonna give my locator for my last flight. But they'll just write they'll just type a bunch of crap, and then they'll send it with hatred. They'll put the devil on there. They'll do their screen name is Satan. It's just all this garbage that it's enough. I've had enough Darth Vader mentality in my life.
Yeah. Yeah. It really does seem like, it would be nice to have the adults running the room again.
I think we will. I don't know if it's going to come around as fast as we want.
Right.
We don't know, but the truth is the truth, and it is. Although we don't know, I mean, we don't know. No one's come out in history and told us how Kennedy died. They haven't said, okay, so I went there. I'm sure you've been there. They always show it to you. I go, I don't want to see the book depository. I don't want to see it. Please don't show me. Here it is. And and I go, okay, so he's behind him and he goes backwards toward where he's getting. Wait a minute. Law of physics. What? And I remember being in 11th grade and we had a conspiracy theorist in health class because our teacher was kind of a cool hippie. And this person came in and said, no, there were 2 other shooters and they were in the other direction and nobody stopped this person. And this was in, where was I? I was in Norfolk, Virginia, I think. And I was mesmerized by it because it was not something that you would normally allow someone to come in with some theory like that. But we'll never know. All we know is that he had sex with other people. That's all anybody cares about. Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah, that's the takeaway, and that's the sort of thing. And you're kind of like, well, it turns out everybody has sex with other people.
Yeah,
like often. Like it's not necessarily a unique thing to being president.
And no, it's actually FDR supposedly would cheat, and he was in a wheelchair. So I mean, what are we talking about?
That just makes a lot of noise.
Yes, very squeaky. Little WD-40 wasn't invented. It would have made it. She wouldn't have known.
People don't know this, but WD-40's original name was FDR-40.
He would pop a wheelie when he had an orgasm. But that's what if you want to talk to me about, all it is this TMZ garbage. When I get asked questions, it's all about people I know that are going through something that I don't want to talk about, that I say I don't want to talk about. And then they stay on it for 3 minutes thinking they're Geraldo and they're going to get some investigative report of garbage. And if you tell me that Marilyn Monroe actually shot Kennedy, then I'm interested.
That's news.
I could care less who has sex with anyone. I mean, if the president comes on television and has a giant sore in his mouth, I think right now, presently, he's got a good makeup artist, is all I'm saying.
There's a lot going on from the neck up. And I don't mean inside.
He should work for an Orangina and sell that. I can't thank you enough for doing this, for talking to me, because I'm lonely. Don Rickles would always hold a man and go, I'm so lonely.
Well, no, this was great. I'm glad it all worked out, and
me too.
And we got a chance to do it. It's always great talking with you, and I appreciate you taking the time to reach out because, yeah, I mean it is. I'm lonely too. It's a weird time, and it's not getting less weird seemingly anytime soon. But I do appreciate the impetus on your part to like put a little positive out there and share it with the world. So thank you.
Thank you. You're a really special guy, John. You're incredibly
Thanks, Bob.
talented. And, I mean, if Diane Sawyer's husband thought so, I had met Mike Nichols.
That's how he liked to be referred to, as Diane Sawyer's husband.
Isn't that hilarious? I met her before I was on the show Full House. I was on the CBS Morning News. So I was with Diane Sawyer. I would be in the makeup room with her. And and he just loved her so much, and I never knew it, but he was this giant fan of my comedy. And I was doing a play in New York. I was doing The Drowsy Chaperone. I took over for Bob Martin at the end, and Mike Nichols came up to me at an Aaron Sorkin play, which was really good. I can't remember. And they both came over to me. I'm just sitting there. I'm exhausted. It's a Monday. I'm off. I've got to go.
Right.
And they grabbed me, both of them. First Aaron, and Aaron did it after Mike. Mike comes up to me and grabs me and goes, you have to know you're a great actor. Do you know you're a great actor? I've watched you for years. You're a great actor. You need to know that. I went, I don't know. Have you seen my work? And he's like, And he grabbed me by the face and he said, "You're a great actor, Bob." And then he slapped me in the face like I was a kid, and he went over. And then I saw them afterward in Esca. And then
Esca, I've been there. Yeah.
Yeah, it was good. But Mario Batali apparently had chef with a chef. He actually had sex
Chef
with
with
a
a sex.
He had chef with a squad. But he squatted on a chef. But but Aaron Sorkin did the same thing. He came up at his own play and said, "You're such a good actor." I was like, weird. And I think it's because I had done well in Drowsy, and the town is a small town. So when you do well on Broadway, people find out quickly.
First of all, how good does that feel?
It was a good night. It was a great night off of work. It was to hear from the guys that you look up to. And that's what you have. You have. I'm so looking forward to all the work you're going to do. And I'm looking forward to, I might FaceTime you and we might have a mocktail together.
Okay.
I'll give you a text and if not, you can block me. I totally get it. Most of my friends have blocked me. I'm cool with it. I respect them. I would block me, but you're just, you've done so much great work and there's so much ahead of you that's so, it's so, you're so centered and so special. And I can't wait I'm so looking forward to your future.
Well, Bob, it's really nice to hear. I mean, count me in the Mike Nichols, Aaron Sorkin group of Saget fans, but it's a pleasure. Thank you so much. And thanks for all the nice things.
Thank you, man. You'll get the flowers at midnight.
Beautiful.
Okay. Be well.
Flowers
man.
at midnight, the Bob Saget story.
flowers for you're done. You got it.
All right. Bye.
Bye, man. Love you.
Love you too.
Thank you. Jon Hamm. What a good man. I love that guy. I really do. I don't care who knows it. That's Norman Lear says that. I love you and I don't give a damn who knows it. Anyway, I just love that conversation. I hope you guys did. He's special, and his next movies, just go see everything he does. He's just, go to your living room because we're not going anywhere for a while, but watch Tag and watch Richard Jewell. They're special movies, and he's a special guy. So I really appreciate that he did this with me. And I appreciate all of you because I do. I don't have to wipe any crap off my nose. It's not up your butt. I'm just telling you that I'm enjoying doing this. And a friend of mine said, "Hey, Bob, don't keep saying that. Don't keep saying you're enjoying doing it." But I don't care. It's the truth. So what the fuck? So you guys be well. You got to do what we say. You subscribe, rate, review. Don't put in and do what John said. Don't put in some fake thing. Be yourself and rate it and review it, with the highest numbers of stars and with the best review possible. Think positively. If you didn't like it, you're allowed freedom of speech, but I'll try to get it off of there. Okay. Everybody be well. And I'll be talking to you.